This is the Book Deal podcast,
where you will discover the inspiring stories behind your favourite books.
We interview seasoned and debut authors, as well as publishing industry professionals, to bring you the best tips and advice on how to get that elusive book deal.
So no matter what stage of writing you're at, we've got you covered. I'm Tina Strawn.
I'm Madeleine Cleary.
And I'm Natasha Rye.
And join us as we pull back the curtain of published authors.
One deal at a time. The Book Deal podcast acknowledges the traditional owners of the land and waters which it's recorded on, and pays respect to their elders past, present, and emerging.
Sarah Armstrong is an award-winning and best-selling author of children's fiction, and in this episode of the Book Deal podcast, we have a wonderful chat about the success of her first survival thriller run, and we touch on the very big topic right now about boys and literacy, her brand new middle grade survival thriller, The Wave, how to write captivating settings that draw readers in, and how she transitioned from writing for adults to writing for children. We chat about how her Uber critique group has helped her and how you can find your own group, and she offers us some hot tips from her years as a writing teacher. Sarah Armstrong, welcome to the Book Deal podcast.
Thank you so much, Tina.
Sarah, I wanted to start our chat today by congratulating you on all the accolades that you've received recently for your middle grade survival thriller run.
Thank you.
There's a lot of them, and I'm gonna go through them. You've been shortlisted for the CBCA Book of the Year for younger readers. You were shortlisted for the Davitt Awards for children's crime fiction, also for the REAL Children's Choice Book Awards, longlisted for the ABIA Book of the Year for younger children, and it's an Amazon #1 bestseller. Sarah, tell me that this is like a dream run, excuse the pun. Can you tell me how it feels to have your work recognised so widely like that? And why do you think Run has resonated with so many of your readers?
Look, it does feel a bit like a dream, because you always hope a book will do well, but they don't always do well. And even good books, there are many good books out there that don't necessarily get the recognition. So I try and take both accolades and criticism with a bit of a grain of salt. I'm not trying to sound ungrateful or anything like that, but if you buy too much into either, it can affect your equilibrium as a writer, I think. So it feels just wonderful, and I hope that it means more people will read it than might have otherwise, because the word gets out. But I try not to let it sway me too much, and I try and just stay focused on my relationship with the books and with the writing. And as to why Run has resonated, I think that it really is just survival stories are suddenly just a bit popular, and that wasn't the thing where I thought, I think survival stories are about to be popular. It's just I really love survival stories and always have. So I wrote one. So I think it's a little bit of that, and I try and write my survival thriller stories and make them really pacey, really page-turnery, which I think can help pull in those readers who might be a little bit more reluctant to read a kind of book that's quite just prose, thick text, solid. It might help pull them in, but also grab those more enthusiastic readers. And while it's very sort of pacey and page-turnery, I really try and work in lots of themes and ideas and relationships, and it feels like a little bit like it's a bit of a Trojan horse. It's this thriller, exciting story, but inside I've got lots of, to me, interesting ideas and themes that I enjoy exploring as a writer. I enjoy both the craft of writing something that's really pacey and exploring ideas that are meaningful to me, because I just always end up exploring versions of the same thing, and I think most writers do that to a degree.
That's such a good answer on a few points then. I think what you were saying initially about just not letting it sway, it's great. And it's not that you're ungrateful, you completely are grateful for all these accolades, but you can't let it really change who you are and how you write and how your whole craft and how you respond to all these sorts of things. So I think that's a really beautiful response. Do you think that, I'm hesitant to bring it up, but the reading for boys thing,
Well,
It's been quite big, as
been really
many
big, hasn't
people
it?
who
Yeah.
are on socials has seen recently. But perhaps at the moment, because it's always been a thing, and people searching for or looking for more books for all audiences, regardless of genders or anything like that. But perhaps it's just, it's more that we're just looking for maybe a few more books that are that fast pace, because we know that all kids, regardless of gender, need that straight up, fast, in your face now for a lot of them, because that's what they're attuned to with gaming and just the world today. Do you think it's more like that? Do you think that's why, one of the reasons maybe why? Just
Yeah, maybe. The fact is, boys are reading less than girls across the board. That's what the statistics tell us. But there are a lot of like socioeconomic factors in there too. So, the the more access boys have to books and the more books reading is modeled around them and the better their school library and more their parents or carers read, all that has a really big influence. So it's not just, it's a sort of, the statistics are a bit varied, but on across the board, yes, boys do read less and men read less. And that I think is part of the picture, that if men are reading less, boys are seeing fewer men. I'm actually going to do a dads and kids talk at an event at a school in Brisbane soon, which is really great. And both the dad and the child will have read Run. And then I come and talk to them about it. So I think that's a really good way to put the focus on the dads. The dads need to be reading in order to get the boys reading. But I didn't set out and think this is a book for boys, because this is the kind of book I loved reading as a kid. I guess I hoped that it would grab. There are certain readers of any gender who this might not appeal to, my books, because they're into sort of a more gentle, maybe romance, whatever. They're not into this kind of book, and that's fine. But I guess I worked in a bookshop in Byron Bay for a while in the kids section, and I felt like there was an opening in this kind of more pacey thriller slash survival kind of stories for middle grade. There are definitely some amazing books out there in that space, but I feel like there's room for more. Because kids can go through a book a week. It's like if they're really reading. So we need a lot of them. So that was part of my thinking. I thought, oh, I can see there's a bit of a space for more books in this area. And also, these are the books I loved reading. So I wasn't really thinking about gender. And I think that it's the gatekeepers who often have more ideas about there being boys' books and girls' books more than the actual boys and girls. I think boys are actually happy most of the time to read books with girl main characters. I was talking to someone the other day, a librarian, he said it's the cover that matters. If the cover feels too sort of, girly, in inverted commas, boys might not be drawn to it. But the story inside, it's either going to grab them or it's not, and they're not so concerned about girl main characters. So yeah, I don't think there's boys books and girls books, but I do think we need to make an effort to get kids across the board into reading more, and it's a really complex and nuanced question. What are the solutions to that? But definitely boys are lagging behind, and that's where I think the male role models, that's one thing they can do, is really step up and read and talk about what they're reading and spend time reading with their kids, and not necessarily reading to them, although that's good too, but reading at the same time and then talking about it. So yeah, I think there are lots of boys who love my survival stories, but lots of girls too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an age-old problem, isn't it? Well, I didn't actually want to touch on this topic at all. It wasn't my intent, but I guess it just kind of swayed that way. But yeah, it's an age-old problem, isn't it? I remember my little kids coming home from kindy saying something like, "Oh, no, but that's a girl color," and you're like, "Hang on, what makes something a girl color or a boy color or a girl toy or a boy toy?" It's this, and you're right. It's those gatekeepers, or that's the adults that are saying that to them. Same goes for book covers. There's no girl book covers or boy book covers, and it is just what appeals to whichever child wants to read whatever, isn't it? So yeah, and there's many more things that I think we know now can improve reading, and it's really probably what the cover looks like is probably very low on that list of
Yeah.
things, isn't it?
It's interesting. I heard, because this topic has been hot recently because Luke Bateman talked about it on Australian Story, and then he interviewed Scott Stewart, the kids author, on Luke's podcast. And Scott Stewart quoted some research, which I haven't actually put my finger on yet, where he was saying that when boys are choosing books for themselves, they don't choose what are necessarily stereotypically regarded as boys' books. They'll choose anything, girls on cover, girls, main characters, whatever. But if they're choosing a book for another boy, they will tend to go for the more stereotypical boys' books, which is really interesting, I thought.
That is interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it's a good thing that it's back in the spotlight because we're all working it's good that we know what we need to do in a way to help. And the talk that you're doing where both the parents and the kids are reading Run sounds incredible, and I can't wait to hear how that goes. We need more of them. Is this like a Father's Day thing? Because Father's Day's coming up.
Oh, that's a good point. Maybe it is.
Maybe we should make
Not
a Father's Day annual Dad's Reading with Kids thing. That sounds like
both
such
read
a
the same book,
fun
talk
thing.
about it together.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
okay. Let's work on
let's
that.
start a campaign.
Okay, we'll table that for another time. Alrighty. So, but back to survival thrillers. You were following up on the success of Run with another survival thriller that I'm sure will follow an even more successful trajectory with your very soon to be released novel, The Wave. Can you tell
Yes,
us about The Wave?
sure. Yeah. So The Wave is about 13-year-old Max, who's home alone on the island where he lives when he gets the warning that a tsunami, an unexpected tsunami, is coming, and he's got to get out and get to higher ground straight away. But he can't find his dog, Ralph. And he has to make the decision, do I stay and do I look for Ralph, or do I get a lift to higher ground? And the minutes are ticking by and he still can't find Ralph, and he still can't find Ralph. And he ends up banding together with a couple of other kids who are also alone on the island to survive the tsunami and the aftermath. And so it's about surviving, but it's also about their relationships. And there are some themes in there because much of the town near me, Byron Bay, Max's home island, has really been affected by tourism in that a lot of people have turned their houses over to Airbnbs or holiday accommodation, or houses have been sold just to be holiday houses and they're not lived in full time. And a lot of people have had to leave the area or pay exorbitant rents or live in really substandard accommodation. There's a real housing crisis in my area. And so I brought that into the novel too, which actually it does work in because when the tsunami comes and the whole town is underwater, everyone is equally affected. All the houses are equally destroyed.
Yep. That's very leveling, isn't it? So in many
Yes.
ways, yeah, I love that. And like you were saying before with the Trojan horse, we don't want to outwardly just spew lessons at them in the books, do we? It's part of that emotional story, isn't it? And you do that very well. It doesn't feel like there's any major lessons to be learned, but it's just naturally happening, isn't it?
And those things are happening. Life is like that. We're living our life and things like that are happening around us. And so it is just part of life, so it works to be part of a book. I think it would feel much less emotionally satisfying if it didn't have all the sort of social and interpersonal and personal elements I add.
Yeah, yeah, it has to be relatable. That's real life, and kids relate to all of that. So that's why they are loving these books, I'm sure. So you're very gifted, Sarah, at creating a sense of place in your books, and your settings always feel very real and very alive. And it's very easy for the readers to immerse themselves in your words to the point where when I was reading The Wave, felt quite anxious, to be honest, about The Wave because I remember the tsunami. Can't remember what year that was. That was, God,
2004, I think.
was it 2004? And so it brought a lot of that back for me, but I guess a lot of your readers probably weren't around then, may not have even know about it, but it did feel very real, which I'm sure is exactly what you were going for. So are you drawing from real life a lot of the time? How have you honed this skill to just make it so real and alive? And is settings or experiences that you've had before? And what tips and advice do you have for other writers to now this very fine art of creating such rich settings?
Certainly have not had an experience of a tsunami, thankfully. I was super obsessed with them as a kid, and I think a lot of kids are. The idea of natural disasters, but particularly for me, the ocean, because we moved to live near the ocean when I was about 9, and I had my sort of first real experiences of the ocean's power and actually being really badly dumped and being kind of trapped out on at the breakers and not being able to get back in because the waves were coming so fast. So I got this very visceral experience of the ocean's power and felt a bit afraid of it for quite a while. And tsunamis are really, in the way you could back then, go down rabbit holes in the encyclopedias and such. It's like there was no internet rabbit hole to go down, but I went down my own form of rabbit holes. And so I guess I'm drawing on that, the memories of how I felt about tsunamis and the ocean back then. And I've got to say, I don't go out super deep in the ocean even now. So, I still have a very healthy respect for the ocean's power. And in terms of setting, look, to be honest, I set most of my stories, and that includes all my adult books, around the area where I live or somewhere very similar. In my mind, the island that Max lives on is basically Byron Bay, but turned into an island. And I can see it in my mind. I can actually see that island and I can see the forest that Kaz was in. And I think knowing a setting well helps me conjure it, because I think I'm like a lot of writers, I'm quite observant about what's around me. I just take joy in noticing things and then thinking, how would I describe that? Even when I'm just walking around town or whatever, I see something interesting and I think, how would I describe that? And in my head, I write a little phrase to describe it. It's just something I've always done. And so I think I just get a lot of practice at describing places. And often in my first drafts, my description of place is a bit rudimentary or cliched, and it sometimes takes a few drafts to extract that and make it a bit, hopefully, a little bit fresher and original. And sometimes I'm actually pulling out description because it's too much, and it's more effective to keep it very simple, not try for the fancy metaphor or, lots of adjectives or whatever. And sometimes I just keep it very simple because the reader has got such a source of images and experiences to draw on, because every book, of course, is a unique meeting between the reader's imagination and the writer's imagination. And everyone's version of the island that Max lives on will be different, will be completely different, and none of them will be exactly like my version, and that's okay. So, yeah, sometimes I think I need to trust the reader and what they bring to it as well.
Yeah, no, that's true. They've got to fill some gaps in themselves too. But I think you absolutely find that in between. What I was picturing in my mind, and I see it now when you say it's Byron. I probably should have thought that because I live not too far from Byron too. And yes, it does feel a lot like that. I was thinking I used to live up north, and I used to live near this at the time, it was a very, I don't know, have you heard of Tannum Sands? It's up near like Gladstone and that. And when I was there was nothing. It was like dirt roads, and you just used to pull your car up and just jump in the ocean. There's no lifeguards, there's nothing. Back when you're a teenager and you've got no cares in the world. And I envision it as that because I know now that it's just, there's apartment buildings, there's Woolworths, there's shops, there's roads, and I know that's what's happened there now. So that's actually what I was envisioning in my mind when I was reading it. Very similar thing. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so survival thrillers. Sarah, you do seem to have a knack with them, it seems, but it is a bit of a jump from what you've written in the past, isn't it? Because previously to this, your first middle grade books were a little bit more sort of magical and fantasy based, and before that, you're actually writing for fiction for adults. So can you tell us a little bit about your previous books and your journey through writing adult fiction and arriving at middle grade?
Sure. So I was a journalist originally, and then I'd always wanted to be a writer ever since I was a kid. And journalism seemed like the next best thing. And in fact, it was a good move because I got to experience the world and people and so on. But I wrote my first novel, and I didn't even think about writing for kids, even though at the time I was married to a children's author and illustrator. You would think it might have occurred to me, but I just wrote for adults. And so I wrote 3 novels for adults, all set around Mullumbimby, where I live, even if I didn't call it that. And then I had a child, and that took me back to writing. It took me back to kids' books, and it was just this beautiful kind of return to my own experiences as a child reading. We didn't have a television when I was growing up. My parents got rid of it. There was only one screen in the house, but they got rid of that. And I just read like a book a day. I read heaps. And the books, there weren't as many great books around then. We're in a golden age of children's literature right now, but there were some good books, some of the classics. And so I just read so much, and I just felt such joy when I revisited that reading to my daughter. It was just like, oh, this just feels like my homeland. Kids' books feel like my homeland. And there's so many beautiful books that I was able to read to her, from picture books through to middle grade. And I just thought, this is the space I want to be writing in. And it's just been fantastic from the first moment. I like the parameters around kids' books, like what you can and can't write about. I like the fact the ending has to have a note of hope, because that helps me. I love the kidlit community, all the authors and illustrators and teacher librarians and publishers and everyone in that world. The booksellers are just a really great group of people, because you spend a lot of time on your own as a writer. So it's lovely to have that sense of a community, and it's a really excellent community. And of course, the readers are just the best thing about writing for kids, is the meeting the kids. And because I go into schools and do school visits, when a kid comes up to you with tears in their eyes and says, "This is my favorite book ever in my whole life," it's like, wow, that's like everything. And another kid came up to me, because in Run, Max lives with his aunt because his dad can't look after him, is not able to. And this kid came up to me and said, "I've never read a book I'm in the same situation. I live with my aunt because my mum and dad are not able to take care of me, and I've never read a character like me in a book." And it was obviously really meaningful to that kid that there was someone like them in the book. Yeah, I think the kids are the very, very best thing about writing for kids.
That's pretty powerful, isn't it, when a child can see themselves in your book, in your character, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's incredible. Yeah, that makes it all worthwhile. So can I ask you, did you find it hard, or was there any, when it comes to publishing across not genres, but age groups, even genres even is hard or sometimes there's some roadblocks in the way when trying to swap genres from the publishing side. Did you find there was any, when you started pitching books for children, was there any sort of questions about, you're an adults, you write adults fiction, anything like that? Or
Well, I think there was not so much of that, more just, are you going to keep writing for kids? Because for publishers, when they take on a new author, quite an investment. And it's a better investment for them if they know you're going to keep producing kids' books for them, ideally, if they're good. So I guess there was just a question about that. Are you going to keep writing in this space, or are you going to go back to writing for adults? And I could say really honestly, look, at the minute, I can only imagine keeping writing in this space. And look, I wrote the first kids book I wrote, my agent did send it around, and there was no interest. So it is still sitting in my drawer. Although amazingly, a lot of the themes in it and bits of it have just found their way into subsequent books. So my first kids book didn't really go anywhere. And then I wrote Big Magic, and I think having an agent really helps. My agent is Pippa Masson at Curtis Brown, and she connected me with Hardy Grant Children's Publishing and Marisa Pintado there. And I don't recall anything about questions in terms of me having written for adults, except, do you see yourself continuing to work in this space? That was it.
Yeah, and that's a fair question. Yeah, I think there's sometimes a bit of hesitance with authors who have written in one genre or for one age group to then, can I pitch it? Is there anything against me doing that? Is there something that's going to hold me back? Yeah, so it sounds like just give it a go.
I've seen quite a few YA authors and middle grades moving into adult writing at the minute. It's interesting. There's a few people writing adult books, which is interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, you have also been teaching writing for over 20 years, haven't you? And currently I see that you've started offering some online courses, which I think is such a wonderful idea, because as much as in-person is so valuable for so many things, especially in this day of an age of everything being online, but by being online, you can reach a lot more people. Can you tell us a little bit about those courses and what you're offering and who should sign up and why and where?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I have taught writing for a long time, and I love teaching. And I guess I was just thinking about how to do it online, and I'm still developing the shape of the sort of main course, but what I've got out there at the minute, and it can be found on my website, which is www.sarah-armstrong.com, are a couple of free courses. where people can get a sense of my teaching style, and like they've got exercises in them and help them get a certain number of words down and come up with an idea if that's what they're seeking to do. And my plan is a little bit later in the year to offer some courses that will involve some live work on Zoom, question and answer time, and chat about craft time, as well as little videos about aspects of craft. Because during COVID, I was teaching a course, a 12-week writing Year of the Novel course, and we ended up having to go to Zoom, and I recorded a whole lot of videos. I'm not using those very same videos, I'm recording new ones, but it just showed me how helpful it can be to have little video lectures, for want of a better word, that people can revisit and go back to, as well as some live face-to-face, not face-to-face, live Zoom to Zoom stuff. So yeah, that'll be later in the year, and people can sign up for my intermittent newsletter from me, but also my partner Alan is also a writer, and we have a Substack happening called The Writer's House, where we talk about aspects of craft and what we're reading, what we're writing, what we're watching, so that people are really welcome to sign up, subscribe to that as well, because we do quite a lot of chat about craft there.
Yeah, so that's a good idea. So sign up to the Substack or newsletter, and then you'll find out when these additional courses come out. But the free ones are a fantastic idea. And even the other ones where you're recording the videos, I think in this day and age, people like to just self-pace it, because it's hard to get everybody in a room all together at once. And it's so valuable especially for parents as well, who you've got kids, if things are held in the evening and it's hard to get a bit of space so you can sit and do it, but you can do it later. I listen to lots of things in my car. I've done full courses, self-paced courses in my car on the way to and from work, because that's just the world that we live in now. So that's going to be super helpful as well. Now, I just wanted to chat about critique groups because you are in a very well-known critique group that many people are very envious of. Can you tell us a little bit about your critique group, how it came about, how it's helped you, and how you help each other?
Sure. So my critique group includes Tristan Banks, Zanny Louise, Deborah Bella, and Leanne Tanner, all of whom write in the kid lit space. And Tristan and I have been friends for a long time, since he made a film about the first short story I ever wrote. When I left the ABC and moved up here, I wrote a short story and it won a local award, and he then made a short film about it. So we've been friends even before he started writing for kids and before I wrote for adults. And Zanny I met through a mother's group. Our daughters are the same age. And they knew, because they'd been in that children's literature space for a little while before me, they knew Leanne and Deb. And it is a really fantastic part of my writing life, I have to say. I feel so lucky to be part of that critique group. We meet basically once a month, and they're generally not in August for reasons that most people will understand, it being book month. And we send each other writing a day or two before we meet. We read each other's work. It's up to 2,000 to 3,000 words. And then we meet, and we're pretty strict on time, 15 minutes chit chat. And then each person has 15 minutes of time where they're given feedback on their writing. And these guys, over time, we've developed a culture where I feel like we've just really nailed the right mix of encouragement and constructive critique. And I think we know each other well enough to know if someone needs a bit more of one or the other, depending on just where they're at that time. So they really help me with my writing, and they help me with being encouraging. They're like a cheer squad, and they've helped me because I'm newer to the children's literature world than them. They've sort of given me lots of really useful information about publishing and about school visits, and so I'm really grateful to them. And I've been in writers groups since I started writing, and they've always meant a huge amount to me. And it's a certain sort of intimacy you have with someone when you share your early drafts with them, because early drafts are early drafts. They're often a bit dodgy, and it's a vulnerable thing to show someone your early drafts. And I think it creates this certain intimacy and camaraderie that I find really valuable.
Yeah, it does. I love the 15 minutes chit chat and then 15 minutes before your feedback for each person. I love how you've organized that. But you do have to be like that, don't you? Because especially, like, it sounds like you're all very good friends. You get on there and a half an hour, 45 minutes goes, and you realize that you already started. I think we tried to do a writing session.
And we just chatted.
We just chatted and ate lemon meringue and Kate Foster. And so we need to, but we will next time. We'll do that. We'll do a quick, just 15
As
minutes
long as
catch
there's
up.
also lemon meringue.
Yeah, you need the lemon meringue to fuel the writing. That's absolutely true. Yes, so I love that organization, and I'll have to bring that to my own critique group. But not everybody can have such a dream critique group as that. Any advice for anybody who's looking for some gaining a critique group? Where can they find one? Especially the vulnerability about sharing your work is quite important too, because a lot of people, if it's the first group or they're just starting writing, it can be a bit scary.
Yeah. I think finding people who are roughly at the same level as you of experience with writing is probably helpful. A lot of people form groups. They go and do a workshop somewhere or a class somewhere and they meet people and form a group. And because of Zoom, people can be anywhere in the country. So it may be just you meet someone somewhere who's also a writer, and you might just start with 3 people and then you might add someone. And as to the vulnerability and the sort of culture within the group, I think it's really great to be very transparent and upfront about expectations around that. And I think a lot of people feel like they've just got to be critical in order to be helpful. But when I'm teaching writing, what I'm encouraging people to do, particularly in first draft, is identify what you really love about this piece of work, your own work or someone else's. Identify what you love and build on that. And the other stuff will drop away because first drafts are inevitably flawed. They're imperfect. And it's not that helpful to get in and be super critical of a first draft, particularly at nitty-gritty level, like sentence level and stuff. We would never give each other feedback on, oh, you've got a typo there in a first draft. It's like, that's really unhelpful. It's more big picture stuff around character and plot and pacing and so on. So I think having a really open discussion with the other critique group members about what are our expectations here, and thinking about the most constructive way to give feedback. And sometimes that can be saying to someone, what would be the most helpful feedback for you today on this piece of writing? Because someone might be just really struggling with a particular aspect of the work, and that's what's most helpful for them to hear. Or they might say, I'm feeling really shaky today and feeling imposter syndrome, and I don't think I can handle anything too strong. So I think lots of transparency is very helpful, so that, because I know of people who've been in groups that were quite critical and it didn't serve them and it didn't serve their writing. And what you want to do is be in a group that's going to support you and help your work become the best thing it possibly can.
Yeah, there certainly is a knack to delivering feedback as well. I think it's two-way street, isn't it? Like you said, delivering it and also receiving it. But I think that was a really important top point that you said there about just transparency and being open. And because sometimes I want to send something and I'm like, I know this is super rough. Just so you know, it's super rough, really drafty. But does the overall, or what I'm after is just the overall gist. And does this seem pacey enough or interesting enough? Or I'm traditionally someone who writes in past tense, but I've recently just tried something in present tense, and I know that I've flopped and changed back and forth between the two the whole way through. And I'm like, please ignore all of that. I don't need to know any of that. But before I start going to align it, can you tell me if you think this is an enjoyable couple of chapters, things like that? So just really asking for what you want.
Yeah, and I think that you make a really good point about receiving feedback, because sometimes you'll get, even in our group, you'll get 2 people who say the exact opposite thing. That didn't work for me because X, Y, Z, and someone else will say, no, I really love that bit. Don't get rid of it.
Yeah.
But if everyone in the group says, you know what, that bit there just didn't quite work for me, then you really need to listen if everyone's saying the same thing. And I think I've given a lot of feedback in my time as a teacher, and I try to be very careful about how I do it. Some people are very able to take feedback, they can really take it on, and some people are not. And the people who are not and who get defensive, their writing is not going to shift and change so much, because it's not that people should take on everything I say, but I think you need to have a sort of willingness to hear what people are saying to you. Just have a think about it. It's when you get a structural notes from your publisher, like the first big editorial notes on a manuscript, it's like, I won't make every single change that's suggested, I love them. I feel really excited by them. Some people don't. They read them and feel despairing because all they read is the criticism and then they need to come back to it a few days later. But what I read when I read those notes is like, here's a chance for me to make this even better, to realize my vision even more effectively. Because the best structural notes will be tuned into the vision I had for the book, and they're just helping me try and realize that. And that's what the best critique will be too. It's not about I write sort of romance and you haven't got enough romance in there. It's more like what are you trying to achieve with this book and how can my feedback help you achieve that better? So I think that's the thing. It's like we're trying to give feedback based on what the author's intention is.
Yeah. No. And I guess if someone's, regardless of if you want to take it on or not, if someone's mentioned something, there's kind of a reason why. And whether you agree with it or not, it's always just worth having a little look into it and thinking, where has this actually come from their point of view? Because there's so many things that we don't see when we're writing it. We're in it, and we haven't explained it properly, and there's usually a reason why it's come across that
And
way.
sometimes in justifying why something is a certain way, that's helpful too, because we get real clarity about, oh no, this is why I've done this. And sometimes that can make you think, oh, maybe I need to do a bit more of that elsewhere in the piece. Or so
Yeah.
even just justifying why you don't agree with their feedback can be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Sarah, what's next for you? I know the wave's just coming out very shortly, so you're going to be very busy with your whole promotion period. But as we know, there's always lots of things going on at the same time, isn't there, when you're writing? So tell us what's next for you.
I'm working on another sort of survival story that's got a bit of crime in it, this one, bit of survival
Exciting.
crime. And I'm about 30,000 words in.
Wow.
I've actually finished the first draft, but the end is a bit sketchy, a bit thin. So I'm now working my way through and fleshing it out. Because it's got the crime element, had to really get the plot sorted because there's clues to drop and so
A lot
on.
more sort of plotting, isn't there, with
A lot more plotting.
Yeah, that's fun. Okay, I'm excited for that.
Yeah. So yeah, that'll hopefully be out around this time next year. Fingers crossed, all being well. But yeah, I'm really loving writing it.
And working on your courses that are probably going to be available maybe towards the end of the year.
And I'll be working on my courses that'll be available towards the end of the year. That's right. I've pretty much sketched them out. I just need to record the videos and get them up. I've learned a lot about the back end of online courses.
It's always new skill, always new things to learn, isn't there?
That's right.
Okay, so Sarah, do you have one final top tip for aspiring and emerging authors
Oh, one
or
top.
any writers in general, anything?
I think my main one would be to, and this is the really big thing I had to come to understand, is that the first draft is just that, and that rewriting is where a story really comes to life, and that rewriting, actually, true rewriting involves big changes. Like I was at a school 2 days ago and I had a 2 hour session with a group of keen writers, and I showed them that all read Run, and I showed them the first draft of the prologue and the first draft of chapter one. And even I was shocked at how different they were and how many things had changed. And they were like, what? Where's that dog come from? And, you know, all this stuff. And I hadn't realized that I'd made such big changes. And I told them, like, there was a mum character and a grandmother character, and they bit the dust. Like, I got rid of them. And, like, there were some really big changes in the rewriting of Run. So I guess my encouragement to people is to really be open to those big changes that sometimes need to happen, whether it's losing characters, bringing new characters in, changing locations, just ditching whole sections that you've written. We can get very attached to things we've written. And on that front, I don't polish my first couple of drafts all that much because I learnt with my very first novel for adults, I polished and polished before I'd really sat back and looked at the overall plot. And then I ditched this whole section in Hobart. There's a whole section in Salt Rain that happened in Hobart that has never made it into the book. And I must have spent hundreds of hours polishing that, and it got lost. Let a first draft and the early drafts be early drafts and be willing to make the big changes.
Yeah. On that note, then, do you, when you have that step back and you look at it as a whole, once you've done your draft, do you do any plotting or planning, or do you do like a story grid thing or a save the cat or anything like that to see if it's actually hitting some of those compulsory scenes and points in your story? Is that one way that you check, or do you just
I do.
vibe it?
No, I don't vibe it. I sometimes use butcher's paper on the floor to track particularly like subplots and find where it's hitting points. But I do use Save the Cat novel.
Yeah.
I find that really helpful. I don't follow it absolutely.
Yeah, it's a
but I find
guide.
it's a really good guide. I find that sort of screenwriting approach with midpoints, turning points and things quite helpful. I also like that video, what's it called? Insanely Good Endings, something by Michael Arndt. He's a screenwriter. He wrote Little Miss Sunshine, and he's got this video on YouTube where he talks about structure and the ending in particular and what makes a truly satisfying ending. And I find that quite a helpful thing to look at as well. So I definitely do think about structure, and I think about it a little bit on the way through, just lightly, and then I sit down and apply it more carefully. And I often find that it's more or less there already, and I just need to amp it up or tweak the placement of certain scenes.
Yeah, it can even help you shorten, like you said, tweak the placement. And sometimes you can realize that, oh, whoopsie, I've like all my points are there, but this one just took a really long time to get there. And that's when you just can go back and have a look at those chapters and think, can one go? Can they be shortened?
That's
Can you
right.
get rid of Hobart? Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today on the Book Deal podcast. Congratulations on your new book, The Wave, out probably by the time this goes to air. It'll probably be out in stores. Everyone grab yourself a copy. Thank you so much for sharing all that wonderful advice today, Sarah.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Tina.
Anytime.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Book Deal podcast. If you are enjoying the pod, we'd really appreciate you following or sharing the show in your podcast directory, checking us out on Instagram and Facebook, or supporting us through our Patreon community at patreon.com/the Book Deal podcast.